धृतराष्ट्र उवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकाः पाण्डवाश्चैव किमकुर्वत सञ्जय। श्रीभगवानुवाच क्लैब्यं मास्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्त्वोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप। यं संन्यासमिति प्राहुः योगं तं विद्धि पाण्डव न ह्यसंन्यस्तसङ्कल्पो योगी भवति कश्चन। आरुरुक्षोर्मुनेर्योगं कर्मकारणमुच्यते योगारूढस्य तस्यैव शमः कारणमुच्यते। यदा हिनेन्द्रियार्थेषु न कर्मस्वनुषज्जते सर्वसङ्कल्पसंन्यासी योगारूढस्तदोच्यते। उद्धरेदात्मनात्मानं नात्मानमवसादयेत् आत्मैव ह्यात्मनो बन्धुः आत्मैव रिपुरात्मनः। बन्धुरात्मात्मनस्तस्य येनात्मैवात्मना जितः अनात्मनस्तु शत्रुत्वे वर्तेतात्मैव शत्रुवत्। यथा दीपो निवातस्थो नेङ्गते सोपमा स्मृता योगिनो यतचित्तस्य युञ्जतो योगमात्मनः। यं लब्ध्वा चापरं लाभं मन्यते नाधिकं ततः यस्मिन् स्थितो न दुःखेन गुरुणापि विचाल्यते। शनैः शनैरुपरमेत् बुद्ध्या धृतिगृहीतया आत्मसंस्थं मनः कृत्वा न किञ्चिदपि चिन्तयेत्। सर्वभूतस्थमात्मानं सर्वभूतानि च आत्मनि ईक्षते योगयुक्तात्मा सर्वत्र समदर्शनः। यो मां पश्यति सर्वत्र सर्वं च मयि पश्यति तस्याहं न प्रणश्यामि स च मे न प्रणश्यति। चञ्चलं हि मनः कृष्ण प्रमाथि बलवद्दृढं तस्याहं निग्रहं मन्ये वायोरिव सुदुष्करम्। असंशयं महाबाहो मनो दुर्निग्रहं चलम् अभ्यासेन तु कौन्तेय वैराग्येण च गृह्यते। असंयतात्मना योगो दुष्प्राप इति मे मतिः पश्यात्मना तु यतता शक्यो वाप्तुमुपायतः। पार्थ नैवेह नामुत्र विनाशस्तस्य विद्यते न हि कल्याणकृत् कश्चित् दुर्गतिं तात गच्छति। मनुष्याणां सहस्रेषु कश्चिद्यतति सिद्धये यततामपि सिद्धानां कश्चिन्मां वेत्ति तत्त्वतः। मत्तः परतरं नान्यत् किञ्चिदस्ति धनञ्जय मयि सर्वमिदं प्रोतं सूत्रे मणिगणा इव। रसोऽहमप्सु कौन्तेय प्रभास्मि शशिसूर्ययोः प्रणवः सर्ववेदेषु शब्दः खे पौरुषं नृषु। बीजं मां सर्वभूतानां विद्धि पार्थ सनातनं बुद्धिर्बुद्धिमताम् अस्मि तेजस्तेजस्विनामहं बलं बलवतां चाहं कामरागविवर्जितं धर्माविरुद्धो भूतेषु कामोऽस्मि भरतर्षभ। देवी ह्येषा गुणमयी मम माया दुरत्यया मामेव ये प्रपद्यन्ते मायामेतां तरन्ति ते चतुर्विधा भजन्ते मां जनाः सुकृतिनोऽर्जुन आर्तो जिज्ञासुरर्थार्थी ज्ञानी च भरतर्षभ तेषां ज्ञानी नित्ययुक्त एकभक्तिर्विशिष्यते प्रियो हि ज्ञानिनोत्यर्थम् अहं स च मम प्रियः वेदाहं समतीतानि वर्तमानानि चार्जुन भविष्याणि च भूतानि मां तु वेद न कश्चन इच्छाद्वेषसमुत्थेन द्वन्द्वमोहेन भारत सर्वभूतानि सम्मोहं सर्गे यान्ति परन्तप येषां त्वन्तगतं पापं जनानां पुण्यकर्मणां ते द्वन्द्वमोहनिर्मुक्ता भजन्ते मां दृढव्रताः.
Very good. So where are we?
We finished 9, I guess. 9 or 8th one.
Okay, I will read 6 and 7, then let's read 8. Yatha akasha sthito nityam vayu sarvatra go mahan tatha sarvani bhutani matsthani iti upadharaya. Just as the vast expanse of air eternally subsists in space, in akasha sthitaha nityam vayu, while still moving everywhere. Sarvatra gaha mahan. Mahan is vayu. Tatha, in that same way, sarvani bhutani, all beings, matsthani iti upadharaya, exist in me, know this to be true. Just as in the world, the air subsists in space and always moves everywhere, the air that is vast in its dimensions, so know that all beings exist in me without cleaving to me, who am omnipresent like space. Evam vayuh akashe iva mayi sthani sarvabhutani sthiti kale tani. Thus, like the air and space, during the period of their existence, all beings subsist in me. Sarvabhutani kaunteya prakritim yanti mamikam kalpakshaye punastani kalpado visrajamyaham. This we definitely read last time. All beings, Arjuna, at the end of a cycle, repair to my nature. Prakritim yanti, mam. Mamikam prakritim yanti. All beings. Kalpakshaye, when at the end of the cycle. Punaha, then again, tani, those beings. Kalpa adau, at the beginning of a cycle. Visrajamiham, I lose them forth. Okay. Anybody wants to read 8?
I can read.
Please.
Prakritim swamavashtabhya visrujami punah punah bhutagramamimam kritsnam avasham prakrutervashat.
Prakritim swam. to this Prakriti, my Prakriti, avashtabhya, resorting, vashikritya, visrujami punah punah. That is, resorting to, subduing my nature and depending on it, I lose forth this nature-born multitude of dependent beings in their entirety. Bhuta Gramano. They are dependent because they have been overwhelmed by flaws like avidya, nescience, for they are swayed by their inborn nescience. Svabhava Vashat. Bhuta Gramam Ivam Kritsnam Avasham Prakrite Vashat. So, what Bhagavan is actually saying is that if anybody conquers that Prakriti within themselves, they attain his status. The difference between him and the Bhuta Gramam is that the Prakriti is his power. But as long as that Prakriti is not known and controlled such that one doesn't come under its sway, then one is Svabhava Vashat. One is inexorably swayed by the power of Prakriti, right? So, how should, by prayer, by surrender to Devi, who is Prakriti herself, that can be attained. It is when we say subdued, it is actually surrender also. Because in our thing, our Hindu tradition, have you noticed that the gods don't order their consorts around? In all our Puranas, the male aspect of God never orders his female aspect around. Yes or no? Yes or no? Have you ever seen it? It is never true. He is always very wise and he knows that she is the power. Yes or no? Yeah. So when he says resorting to, that means through great wisdom, acknowledging that power of the Devi, he is no longer subject to it. It's a peculiar thing. Right? If you try to control something, it won't last under your control. But if you attain the wisdom and flow with it, oh, then it is in your control for sure, right? Yeah. So, in that sense. Now, this is touching on a very interesting point, because last time also it came to this business of neither do beings exist in me, and then the other way he says just as all beings exist in me, etc. Okay. So now this can be a bit, I mean, it depends on how the mind reacts to it. There are various reactions. One is you can just say, this is God's word. Okay, I don't care about the distinctions of philosophy. This is God's word. I derive some benefit from the Bhagavad Gita. That's perfectly acceptable, right? Or one may have a certain concept, and that is fine. There is no right or wrong concept at some level within this creation. If you go and read in Hindu philosophy, there are so many distinctions and fine distinctions, right? And they are useful to a point. Definitely, if you look at Sri Adi Shankaracharya, great guru, he wrote extensively intellectual treatises on philosophies, right? In order to convince his opponents and also instill faith in his followers that this is the correct perception, right? But each person will form their own notion, correct? Now, as long as that notion doesn't cause any inconsistency within you, right, you will not seek to know anything deeper, yes or no? Mm-hmm. And neither should anyone try to impose or correct that notion in anybody. Okay. Let me give you an example. Suppose a child believes in Santa Claus, right? And through this belief in Santa Claus, it leads a pretty sweet and innocent life. It believes that Santa Claus is keeping a book of the, what is it, the good and the nasty, right? Huh? And noting down all the actions. And at the end of the day, Christmas time, it'll either get a gift or a lump of coal. Yes or no? Isn't this? And if this is enough to keep the child on the good path, what should we say? What can we say? You tell me. What is your reaction? I'm not saying there's an answer to this. What is your reaction?
And continue the kid doing it.
What is your thinking about this? I'm just saying, isn't this true, right? I mean, I'm saying that many kids at certain age, there is a period of innocence and a certain conception, right? What I'm saying is, should one disturb the child's thinking? Not really, right? Because as long as it is content and consistent, and as long as it's not doing anything bad, right? Now, suppose based on the belief in Santa Claus, the kid starts and coming and telling everybody, you're near and dear, that you should also believe in Santa Claus. Then what to do? What do you say, Mahesh?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a good conundrum. Yeah, within a certain, certain group or within a family, that seems to be good for, to control the child's behavior to keep in a good path. But over time, he will, discover, or his intuition should come that this always won't work, right?
Right.
But before that, the question you asked, like, okay, when the child start talking to other kids, okay, this is what we should follow, then it starts the problem.
Yeah.
Right? So that would be the dogma, right? Kind of
Yes.
trying to push somebody.
Right. Indeed. So this is the point. So as long as whatever conception anyone has about even the Bhagavad Gita, which is a very advanced text, right? This is not a Santa Claus story. uh, but at the same time, whatever conceptions one has, as long as they do not create internal disturbance within you, right? So it is consistent with your picture of the world and your experience and what you read. As long as that viewpoint is not impinging on, feels no desire to impinge on other people, there's no problem with it. Okay. Now, in Yoga Sutra, we have, so now let's go to the next level. And each of you can apply this to yourself and tell me whether this makes sense or not. Yoga Sutra is a science, it is more scientific than many current modern science. People don't know this. So why is that? First of all, in Yoga Sutra, like in any good scientific principle, we define what are the valid means of cognition. Without an agreement within a philosophical system of what is valid and not valid, you cannot decide on anything. Yes or no? If you and I are to have a conversation about a philosophy, you and I need to agree on what are valid means of knowing. If you and I don't agree on that, then it will become like fake news and the orange buffoon in the White House now. Can say anything, anybody else can say anything, and there's no fact. Yes or no? You see, we don't live in this gray area where nothing is definite. You cannot live like that. It's not a recipe for a good life, right? So we have to have some valid means of cognition. So Yoga Sutra gives this definition very clearly. It says there are 5 modes of the mind. Okay, means of cognition. We call that pramana. Praman in Hindi means proof, right? Our Hindi experts can weigh in. Tiwari ji, Resi ji.
Yes,
It's
that's
proof,
what
right?
it means. Yeah.
Praman.
See.
So in Sanskrit, it means slightly different, similar, but it's a valid way of knowing. So they're so close, the two meanings, right? So now, what are these praman? Yoga Sutra is very beautiful in this. That's why it's not a system of blind belief. It's a system of genuine faith. Right? What is faith? Provisional acceptance that later I will experience these things, right? So three means, three forms of praman. Pratyaksha, Anumana, Agama. Pratyaksha means, in Sanskrit, literally that which is before my very eyes. But we have to be careful about this. One should not interpret it too literally. It does not mean always sense perception through the eyes. It means my personal experience, which could be in the physical world or it could be in any of the other worlds. But it is truly my experience. We all have a definition of my experience, right? Even your dreams, you say they are my dreams. Correct? I cannot come and see your dreams. That is your personal experience. So pratyaksha is your personal experience. Second, anumana. Anumana is inference. Now, the most powerful inference to draw is that if there are gurus such as Bhagavan Sri Adi Shankaracharya, Ramana Maharishi, Sri Ramakrishna, they were human beings, yes or no? They inhabited a body just like us. They ate, drank, performed all the human functions, right? If they could know the truth, if they could attain in yoga, if they could master yoga, then that is within the realm of every human being. That is the most important inference to draw. Anumana. So I have my personal experience. Fundamentally, yoga tells you that 99.99% of the personal experience of 99.99% of the people is tainted, klishta. Right? Many people don't realize this the moment they open Yoga Sutra. But this is what yoga is telling you. You have your personal experience. It's not denying you your personal experience at all. You have your personal experience. It does not deny that. Right? But if you read through, it says 99.99% of 99 of experiences of 99.99% of the people are tainted, klishta. This is what Maharishi Patanjali says. But there are some people, like the great gurus, not just those three, many others also, who have attained the state of aklishta experience, untainted experience. Yes or no? Right? So second valid means of cognition says, by inference, as a human being, it is not beyond you. Okay, now third one. What is the third valid means of knowing?
Agama.
Very good. What do you understand by agama?
That what is written in scriptures.
Right, right. So we have to take recourse to what is given in the, because why is that? Because yoga darshana is an astika philosophy. Yoga darshana says asti iti astika, right? What is? Whatever the Vedam says, right? That is true. Yoga darshana is a way to see the truth in the Vedas, right? What are the Vedas? Vedas are the visions of the rishis in meditation, in samadhi, right? The Vedam is just the outpouring. If you listen to the Rig Vedam, it's the outpouring in song, in verse of the vision of the rishis. That's what it is, right? So what Yoga Darshana says is, oh human being, you can understand. I can show you a way to see that vision. How do I get a darshanam? Right? So darshana is an experience, right? Right? So now you have these three. Now, if you're an intelligent human being, right? If these three are not in line with each other, right? If they're like this, then what will it do inside the mind? Now I'm asking, what should it do?
Conflict.
It should create a question at least, right? Let's take the positive side. It can create a questioning attitude, correct? That, okay, these agamas say something, right? They are not consistent with my experience, right? It's not how I see it. So there are two possibilities. One is I am right and the agamas are wrong, which is fair, correct? But then the path of yoga says we cannot help you. That's all. You don't have to believe in science. How many people are science deniers? Does God say you cannot live if you deny science? No, no, no. He says live. You can live. You can very well live. But if you jump from the top of a mountain and say the law of gravity doesn't hold, will it not hold because you didn't believe? Tell me.
No.
No. You will fall and break your limbs. Right? So God is ever merciful. He did not say believe in science. Jump off the cliff if you want. But the laws of nature you cannot violate. Right? Similarly, yoga is talking about a law of nature deeper than the physical world. Right? Sanatana Dharma means eternal law. Correct? Yes or no?
Yes.
So God is not saying you have to believe all this. Right? You do what you want. Very liberal, like a liberal father. Right? You do what you want. But if so now suppose you say, okay, very well. So the most adhama and dull-witted person will say, my experience is superior. I reject Anumana. The gurus are all bonkers. And this agamas, whatever. Let's go. Fine. Yoga Sutra doesn't work for them. Right. Now, let's take the second time aspirant. So then second aspirant, what can be the options now? You tell me. Suppose this person doesn't say both are bonkers. What are the various options available?
They
Right.
somewhat accept, but they don't have enough faith.
Okay.
I mean, they don't argue that much, but they are not convinced either.
Okay, very nice. Yeah, okay, sitting on the fence, kind of.
Yes.
So then somebody else was going to say something. Rakesh, huh?
No, Professor.
Sorry, somebody else. But audio is unstable. I hope you don't mind my going off script a bit, but I'm curious to get your reactions. What else can happen?
So they try to go and find out for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
don't-
I mean, that's what satsang and sadhana is about, right? Correct? Yeah. Okay. So, in that context, when we get anything from the scripture, I mean, Bhagavad Gita is agama, right? Right. So, when we read any of these verses, if that verse doesn't make complete sense, so like I said, Santa Claus or non-Santa Claus attitude, right? Santa Claus is okay, nothing wrong, right? That's the beauty of Bhagavad Gita, right? See, Bhagavad Gita is not giving you one approach. If you go and read any of the ancient Greek philosophers, okay, there is Stoicism. You can read Seneca, Cato. Then you can read Aristotle, right? And they will have different viewpoints. But what Bhagavan Sri Krishna gives is, in one chapter you will read like it will sound like Stoicism. In another chapter it will sound like Aristotle, right? So the power is every conceivable path to the truth is covered. This is why it's a very remarkable book. It is not, see, Yoga Sutra gives one way, but Bhagavad Gita gives yoga, but also bhakti. So later Bhagavan will say, listen, if you don't want to worry your mind with all these philosophies and things, just be devoted to me, right? And so this is where, when you ask me sometimes which path is best suited, this in your heart only you can answer, right? In your heart, you can answer. You can sit and say, and humility is a good thing, right? One may say, I don't have time or the interest to debate all these philosophies of, is it Satkaryavada, Asatkaryavada, is it Parinamavada, is it Vivartavada? These are all beautiful arguments, right? Is it Ajatavada? These kind of various arguments from Gaudapada, Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya, right? Sankhya philosophy. Very interesting though. So if your mind is inclined towards that, definitely one can pursue that, right? The philosophies themselves, I feel, are more useful when we come in contact with other people or have a discussion. We have seen this in our Hindu Yuva also, right? Sometimes you are called upon to explain. So what is all this? You're very interested in all this satsang. What do you guys do? What do you guys think, right? Don't you think that Jesus is only the way and only Jesus saves? Rebut me now. You have no choice. Yes or no?
Yes, it happens.
So you have to have a mix probably, right? A little bit of devotion, as much as one can muster, a little bit of philosophy, right? So the fundamental point that I'm getting at here in a long-winded way is that our Hinduism does not really talk of creation. It talks of manifestation. The Santa Claus type of religionists are quite happy with creation, right? But a person of some intelligence will start to find the creationist viewpoint somewhat deficient. Okay. And there are many questions that one can raise about that, and you should raise them, right? If you feel inclined, right? So why should one not believe in creationist philosophy, right? These kind of things. Straight away you will see yoga philosophy is, many people don't understand. I find it very funny. So yoga is incredibly popular in the West, right? Yes or no, right?
Yes.
Yoga is completely contrary to two main notions. One is, it is actually a theistic philosophy. People don't understand this. Okay. It says that there is Ishvara. Ishvara is a form of consciousness uncorrupted by karma. But many people think, I do yoga, I don't believe in any God and everything. Okay. This is kind of like saying, I believe in science, but I don't believe in gravity or something like that. Okay. So the Yoga Sutra is a theistic philosophy in the sense that it acknowledges the presence of a God. Why is that? Ishvaraha comes from the Sanskrit root Isha. Isha means lordship. It doesn't mean anything else, right? Even in other languages, Tamil, we say Ishwaran. Ishwaran means God, right? So there is no other way to interpret that verse. However, you may twist your head and put it between your legs and do how many other asanas, you cannot get rid of Ishvara in yoga philosophy. Okay. Second point. The very fact that Yoga Sutra acknowledges Anumana means that a person like Jesus is not a special person. In Christianity, Jesus is unique. He died for everybody's sins. But nobody else can die for anybody else's sins. That's not what yoga says. Yoga says Anumana. Yoga says, first of all, find out what is death, boy. Then we will talk about the rest. Do you even know what death is? Right? So it's a very advanced philosophy, right? So these kind of roadblocks. So what I'm saying is, if you look at the populace of lemmings who say, I'm doing yoga and whatnot, and don't even bother to find out what it is about, you see, that's like a lemming, right? They all run off the cliff apparently at one go, one behind the other, right? So intelligent person, endowed with God's intelligence, brain put between the two ears, must think, right? That person must use their mind and consider, what is my personal experience? What is this inference? What is this scripture telling me? How can I resolve these points? How should I clarify my doubts? Yes or no? Right? Then everything becomes meaningful. Everything becomes productive. Otherwise, it fails to have the catalytic effect that the scripture is intended to have. Scripture is intended to have a catalytic effect on our minds. Catalytic effect means it will create a reaction, right? A rapid reaction. So that is the nature of the scripture, right? So we must think about this. So anyway, think and save your questions. We'll read one more verse. Meanwhile, keep thinking about the questions. So then Bhagavan says, we read 8, right? Now 9. Who is going to read 9?
Professor, one small question.
Certainly. Questions are always welcome.
When like Bhagavan said Bhuta Gramam, is it human body or is it like the whole?
Entire multitude of all living things.
Okay.
Multitude of bound beings is how. So let us see. Bhuta Gramam, Bhuta Samudayam Imam Vartamanam. So let's see. Prakritim Swam Swiyam Avashtabhya Ashritya Vashikritya Visrujami, resorting to subduing my nature and depending on it, I lose forth. Visrujami Punah Punah Prakrito Jatam. This nature born, Prakritito Jatam is this nature born. Bhuta Gramam, multitude of dependent beings. Bhuta Samudayam, Imam Vartamanam in their entirety. Kritsnam, Samastam, Avasham, Asvatantram, dependent, not independent. Going to read 9?
I can go.
Please.
Nacha mamtani karmani bodnanti dhananjaya udani na bada sina masaktam tesu karmasu.
So let us work on Pada 3. Udasina, right? Udasina, Avadasina. Avadasinam, Asaktam, Teshu Karmasu. So this actually is so beautiful. It gives the definition of Ishvara in the Yoga Sutra. Why is that? Let us look up. Where is definition of Ishvara and Yoga Sutra. Aparamrishtaha is the key word. Purusha Visheshaha will come. Purusha Vishesha means is a special form of consciousness. Karmashe Aparamrishtaha, unaffected by the where is it? One, I'm guessing the number here, but I may be wrong. Sorry. Let me go to the index. 123 or 124 probably. Let's see, 23. Klesha karma vipaka ashayair aparamrishtaha purusha vishesha ishvaraha. Klesha, I told you already, klesha is taint, klishta. So, klesha and karma. Vipaka. Vipaka is fruition. Like in Ayurveda, we say, you eat something, what is its, it has virya, rasa, and vipaka. So there are 3 stages. When you first eat something, it has an impact on the body. Then you digest it, it has second impact. Then it comes, the digestive juices act on the thing and it has a vipaka, a fruit, that has third kind of effect on the body. So that ripening or fruition is vipaka. So the klishta, the taints and the actions, fruition, asayaihi, that store or residuum, aparamrishtaha, untouched or unaffected. Purusha Vishesha, a form of pure consciousness, is Ishvara. Ishvara is that form of pure consciousness, in this translation, is a distinct, incorruptible form of pure awareness, utterly independent of cause and effect, lacking any store of latent impressions. See how beautifully accurate Bhagavad Gita. Exactly, he says, those actions don't bind me. Those actions, O Arjuna, bind me not. Nachamam tani karmani nibadnanti dhananjaya. I am, as it were, indifferent to them all. Udasina.
Dr. Shankar, is it Udasinvat Asinam Asaktam?
Haji?
Is
Yes.
it?
Udasinavat means as if one is indifferent, right? As it were. Yatha udasinaha apekshakaha. Upekshaka, sorry. Upekshaka is indifferent, right? Upeksha is indifference. Kaschit tadvat asinam. The reason for it is this: I'm indifferent, as it were. Atmanaha avikriyatvat. Vikriya is the unchanging nature, non-changing, immutable. Asaptam, unattached. Phala sangarahitam, not clinging to the fruits of actions. Abhimana varjitam, I don't have the conceit of agency in regard to these creative works. That's because Bhagavan says, I am powerless without my consort. She does everything. She is my power. It's also a good recipe for marital bliss. Mahesh is laughing, he's smiling. God can teach us many things, right? So, the thought, I do them, doesn't occur to me. In the case of others too, the cause of dissociation is the absence of the conceit of agency and the non-clinging to fruits of works. So, what does he say? Abhimana varjitam, aham karomi iti ahankaraha, iti teshu karmasu. Ataha anyasyapi kartrutva abhimana abhavaha. The absence of the notion of doership, conceit of agency. And phala asanga abhavascha, phalasanga abhavascha. The non-clinging to the fruits, that phalaha is, that's why long ah. and then there is some samas going on there. Abhavasya asambandha karanam. Anyatha karmabhihi badhyate moodaha. Otherwise, the deluded man will get bounded. Koshakaravat, like a silkworm. Iti abhipraya. This is the idea, right? So Bhagavan himself doesn't have this notion of agency, right? And hence also the recommendation and power of karma yoga. That is, when practicing karma yoga, in a sense, one is behaving like the Lord, right? And the more you mimic somebody, the more you become like them. Right? Now, did we already finish this verse? If you guys can remember, Prakrutehe kriyamanani gunaihi karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma karta ahamiti manyate. You know this? We did it, right? So why now the explanation? Why is the ahankara mudha thing? Because all actions are done by Prakriti alone. Right? There is actually very interesting modern research in which they consider this question. So let's say I say I have free will, in the sense I'm going to touch my foot here. Okay, I have free will, right? So apparently Einstein said that we can use our will to want something, but we cannot will our will. This is a very profound statement from a scientist. Think about it. So what he means by will there is Prakriti in some sense, right? I will try to find the exact quote, and I will send you a link also. There is a pretty interesting video on Einstein and Ramana Maharishi. So by this, and the science that is being done is of the following nature. So what they do is they through the brain activity, they try to monitor, and they try to see the consciousness, that is, we become conscious of the action, right? And what is the brain activity? When does the brain activity start? Does it start after we become conscious of the action and the action happens? But they actually find that there is brain activity even before we intend to act. That is very bizarre, right? So even before we become conscious that we are going to do something, something is happening even in the physical plane of the brain. I thought that was fascinating, right? And so we may say that's Prakriti, right, in this context. Right?
That means that in the background, before the thought comes in our mind, the gunas play before that.
I can find no other way to explain that. I will send you that video. They have measured in nanoseconds how much is the time between. Of course, I've not read the original paper, but nevertheless, it's fascinating as a concept that people should want to measure these things. Anyway, so slight digression, but nevertheless interesting, right? I mean, it's interesting to see other people are also curious about these things. So this is how Bhagavan says, those actions, O Arjuna, bind me not. I am as it were. So that, of course, this constant awareness that it's always Prakriti is hard. It's not easy. I mean, we may remember a verse and then it may hold some sway in our mind intellectually. Then when we sit in meditation, we may be aware of it, right? But slowly, the more and more one thinks and becomes convinced of an idea, it starts to take over one's thinking. And this is not a bad thing. When the mind is filled with good and correct ideas, then definitely it helps, right? So slowly, as we see that actions are nothing but the play of the three gunas. Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. They go in cycle and they play, right? Later in, I think, in the Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, Bhagavan will say, This cycle is unstoppable. From tamas, rajas will arise. Tamas cannot stay forever. Then once rajas arises, it will activate. It cannot stay forever, then sattva will come in. Sattva cannot stay forever, tamas will come in. In this way, evam pravartitam chakram. Right? So Bhagavan is aware of this. Right? Even in the daytime, even in our waking life, we can see this. In the morning, we are emerging from tamas, right? When we enter the waking state, you're emerging from a deep tamas, right? So what is the first thing that we feel in the morning? Let's hit the snooze button and snuggle under the covers a little more. Yes or no? Right? This is a fight between tamas and rajas. Tamas is saying, come on, 10 more minutes. It's okay. It's really cold outside. Right? And then somewhere there is a flash of light that says, okay, maybe I have to get up and do Sandhya Vandanam with everybody. On Sunday mornings, those of us who have to get up tomorrow are well aware of this. So some good thought enters, right? And this is the same fate of Brahma himself. When he was first told to create and he was born, he fought for 10,000 years, right? And this Madhu and Kaitaba tormented him in terms of sweet, pleasurable things and distasteful things. But then he had to keep his resolve and say, no, I'm going to create. This is my job. So similarly, we have to know what our job is and get up, right? So now a certain rajas is needed. If you don't have rajas, you can't get out of bed, right? So you do some exercise, you do some asanas, you do something to perk yourself up, right? But if you only keep in the rajasic temperament, that's not good also. So then some sattva comes into play, right? So then we sit in prayer or Sandhya Vandanam or something to acknowledge the rising of the sun and the beginning of this Sandhya, right? Similarly, this goes on middle of the day, right? There is a rhythm to the day. Ayurvedically speaking, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. is considered kapha time. Mm-hmm. So that's why sleeping beyond the sunrise, the mind gets dulled because it is the macrocosm is in a kapha state. If the microcosm is also not waking up, it is going to become very dull, they say, right? So entering the waking state at the same time as the sun is a very powerful thing. 10 to 2 is the pitta state. At the time when the sun is at highest, digestive fire is at the highest, our fire and passion is highest, our work, the best work of the day can be done in that time, right? Then lunch also should be eaten. After 2 p.m., it is vata time, 2 to 6. Mind starts wandering. And one starts feeling quite snoozy. Right? So then again, some sort of appropriate modification. When 6 p.m. again, kapha sets in for 4 hours. So again, that's why before 10 p.m., if one sleeps, good. If you stay up beyond 10 p.m., the mind gets active again. You want to have a midnight snack and activation of pitta happens. Right? So this is again a rhythm. So that is the cycle. So once one becomes aware of the cycle, then a certain depth in meditation also happens, right? We say that we seem to be being impelled by some forces, right? Which are probably more powerful and ancient than we knew, right? So then the discovery, what is this Prakriti? That interest starts. So anyway.
Dr. Shankar, I have the quick question.
Absolutely.
About the three gunas like interchangeably moving around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like one after another.
Mm.
That the inherent Prakriti is because of the Prakriti. I mean, everything is in Prakriti, the creation, but because of what we have in our karmasaya, impelled. Some people are more, inherently pulled towards the tamas, and some are, rajas, and some are, more sattva, and then the jivan mukta gurus are beyond that, right? So is that because of the karma, sir, what we have, the cycle?
Karmashaya has its impact, undoubtedly, but Bhagavan Shankaracharya's firm conviction is that knowledge can burn any karma. Right? It is knowledge alone that is the antidote. Because where did this karmashaya? It's a good question. Where did this karmashaya come from? What is its origin? So Yoga Sutra says, klesha mulaha. Mula means root. Having the taints as its root. This karmashaya is a giant tree that has grown. But where is its root? Its root is in the kleshas. And then janma, drishta adrishta janma vedaniya is the last part of that verse. Drishta, seen, adrishta, unseen, janma, birth, vedaniya, have to suffer. Right? So, seen and unseen births have to be suffered on account of this repository of karma, which has as its root the taints. Kleshas. And what is the foremost taint? Avidya. Because of the five, avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, avidya is the first one. Avidya is the root of all of them. So the counter, what is the right word? Not antibody.
Antidote.
Antidote. Antidote. Thank you. Antidote. Antidote to avidya is the Brahma Vidya. Right? Even hearing once acts like a catalyst on the mind. Once a person hears, they get transformed in subtle ways. We don't know. We cannot go inside and see how much it is transforming, right? But it is. Right? And on top of that, if one is so blessed as to be born in the tradition itself, right? Even more blessing there. So that listening itself, Shravana, then Manana, Nididhyasana, right, is most certainly productive and can transform any giant tree of karmashaya and reduce it to ashes. Right? Such is the power of the medicine. Right? That's a very empowering thought. Right? It's a very jolly thought. So, best thing is to not concern oneself too much with the how big is the karmashaya. Right? It doesn't matter. Right? If you, when you have to destroy a tree in this country, if you've had the unique curse or blessing, I don't know, of having to get rid of a tree, you call these guys. First thing they can do is they cut the tree down to the stump, right? If you cut the tree down to a stump, it's not enough. You have to remove it from the root, right? So there is a chemical way of destroying roots, which I could not stand. I said, no, I don't want to do this, right? So they literally pour chemicals right into the root bed and it'll kill the plant, right? So that is how our Brahma Vidya is. So it doesn't matter how big that tree is or how stunted it is or how weirdly it has grown, right? If you pour the chemicals into the root, it's finished. That's all. It cannot survive. Yes or no?
Yes.
Very good. Acha, we're at time.
Empowering. Thank
What
you.
is that?
Very empowering.
Yes. So maybe we'll come back and pick up. We made tremendous progress like a sloth today on account of my digression. But that's okay. It was fun, hopefully. That's the main point. As long as it was enjoyable. Right. Acha. So, any questions, comments before we conclude?
Dr. Sankar, I have a question on the
Yes.
on the part that you said about Sravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana.
Yeah.
So, at which point does the tree, actually get destroyed? You mean just listening is not enough, or just meditating is not enough, and then there's other aspect of the karma yoga that you need to do, your nitya karmas and everything. So, what is that point where
It's a. Mm, um, you won't be upset at me if I tell the truth, right? You won't.
no.
Promise. Okay. So in the Yoga Vasishtha, right, there is a nurse who tells the Pranav. Do you remember this story?
No, sir. Like, if you start, then I will remember.
So she tells the story of these three princes who got in an aerial car and flew off into land where there was no sun and moon, and then they did. I mean, it's a fantasy story. Okay, it's a completely illogical, absurd story. You get it? Okay. And so then, what is there to change? I mean, all the conceptions that we have built, that there are these obstacles, are themselves conceptions. There are no obstacles. You're perfect as you are. The mind struggles with the mind, right? Why does the mind struggle with the mind? You should read the story. I'll find it actually. I wish it was right here, but I'll have to go to the other room and pick it up. But next time. Our scripture is so full of gems. It's like you sit in this treasury and then, you say, oh, here's a beautiful, and there is no end to it. Right. So like this, talking, Shiva, you and I, we will both become enlightened one day. If we keep talking like this, how will it stop? Right? That's all there is to it. Right? You go back and ask your friends from 10 years ago. Okay? Honestly, you ask them, what will they say about Shiva? What will they say? They'll say he's a jnani. In their eyes, have you not changed? Think about it. Yes or no? You are actively engaged in the scriptures. You're practicing. You attend satsang. You read Bhagavad Gita.
Just in my eyes, he changed a lot.
Yeah. See? Right? It's true. It is true. I mean, I appreciate the humility, and I'm not trying to, what I'm trying to say, make light of the question at one level, right? But at the same time, what is said in the Yoga Vasishtha is not untrue either. Yes or no? Right? That nurse is giving a very catalytic answer. Again. Right? Right? So you listen to it, you definitely accept it intellectually, right? Intellectually. So after all, everybody who is here is more attracted to listening to what is in the Bhagavad Gita than listening to the Jehovah's Witness who came to your house and said, please come to the Kingdom Hall next Sunday. That much is agreed, right? Okay. So intellectually, this is appealing somehow. Where is this intellectual appeal coming from? Right? Deep down inside, intuitively, you feel this is there's something more sensible about this, right? Now, as you go through life, your mind may put up counter arguments and let it put up, which is good, right? And then again and again, this philosophy seems to answer it, right? At the same time, it gives peace. It gives great emotional clarity. It gives a very good lifestyle, right? And so internally it transforms us in a most beautiful way, right? Indeed, what you're saying is not wrong. There is a sadhana. There is a manana. There is a point. I'll not deny that. There is a point where one is practicing very, very intensely. Very, very intensely. And you put in all your effort. I've done that, right? With great desperation. And nothing is happening. And you keep putting more effort and still nothing is happening. And you're wondering that this is just a dead end. But no, whoever is the channel of Guru is telling you, no, keep trying, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. So what is the true measure of a sadhaka? The true sadhaka never gives up. How many ever times you think you're failing, you never give up, right? Every time you start again. It's okay. Did I not achieve what I thought, the siddhi that I thought I would get? I will try again today. Today is another day. This meditation is the right one, right? That relentless determination is what breaks through, right? When you have exhausted every effort, every ounce of effort, nothing must be remaining. If you say you have not attained, I say you have not made enough effort. There is still something remaining. You have not given up completely. At that point, when you give up everything, she will descend with her grace. She has never forsaken anyone to date, right? And our own Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna has said, it's only when the child puts down the toys and cries that the mother picks up the kid, right? So his analogy is very powerful and beautiful. So, and yet the entire, when one obtains the grace, this effort was a myth, is the feeling. It was a figment of imagination. There was no real effort to put it in the first place. This is the understanding. That is why that lady, the nurse in the Yoga Vasishtha, is correct. She says, you created this giant mountain and you climbed on the top of the mountain. And then you realize that you are nothing. There was no mountain and you are nothing. So what is the whole bhashan about? That's why what is said there is also true, right? But undoubtedly, every sadhaka has to experience that and then feel. And that's again, the pramana becomes in accord with the pratyaksha becomes accord with the agama. Right? And that's truly what everyone is seeking. And that's a good thing to seek, undoubtedly. But effort, sincere effort, consistent effort, satkara, nairantarya, what is that? Satu dirgha kale, satkara nairantarya asavito dhrida bhumihi. Correct? Uninterruptedly for a long time, right? Now, of course, you have to exercise your judgment when to intensify, right? God has given us also some peculiar obstacles. So tomorrow, if you're in a very difficult grihastha state, or family is there, a lot of demands are there, then the external sadhana is of two types, internal and external, and they are the same thing. Right? So if somebody keeps, let's say you have an irritating kid who comes and keeps stepping on your foot 20 times a day, that is sadhana. So you want to give it a tight slap and you restrain yourself. That is sadhana. Right? Hasn't it happened to you? You must be very gentle people if you don't get irritated like that. On the other hand,
Many times.
if you have the privilege of sitting alone at home for 3 hours and you do intense practice, that's also sadhana. Right? At one age, children will not stop talking. You will wish, please close your mouth and go to sleep for 10 minutes. It's not happening. So to smile in spite of that is a sadhana.
That is happening to us now.
Yeah. So don't feel bad. You don't have to sit intensely in a cave and meditate only to have sadhana. What do you say, right, Shiva? Does it accord with your personal experience?
Yeah. So there is no, say like kind of right answer to saying like when this tree or when this karma say will all be diminished. Like there is no right answer. You just keep putting effort on whatever you think will be needed to put, and then
I think for the quality of the minds that are here in satsang, if one were to project a timeline, it is so close that it is within grasp. Okay. Now, if you ask me about anybody else, in some cases, people have, you can tell from the karma shaya that they are in difficult places, right? It's not going to be so easy. It's not impossible, but it's going to take more effort, right? But this much is my feeling, that based on what I have seen, and to the limited extent that I have been granted any wisdom about this, it seems it is very close. This is all I would say, humbly. So that should be empowering, right?
Yeah, Swamiji says, be still.
Yeah.
And I think that is the hard thing to do, without being tossed by, pulled by anything, right? Be still, which is the hard thing. I think we have to unlearn everything what we have learned, so far, and then, be still, be in that state, which is already within us. So kind of trying to unlearning.
Yeah. Indeed. Any other comments, questions? The fruit is very close, Shiva, like here. Okay, then I'll say our Swasti Mantram, Shanti Mantram, and then we will adjourn. Om Tacham Yora Vrinimahe Gatum Yajnaya Gatum Yajnapataye Daivihi Swastirastunaham Swastirmanushabhyaham Urdhvam Jigatu Bheshajam Shanno Astu Dvipadehe Sham Chatushpade Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste everyone. Delightful to see you all again. It was quite felt like too long a break, even one weekend. Such is the addictive nature of satsang. Anyway, have a lovely weekend, and we will see you next week, hopefully, right?